Welcome to our training, Nicotine and THC, the dangers and what to look out for, presented by the Farmington Valley Health District. By the end of this training, we hope that you will understand the elements of addiction, understand the nicotine and THC pathways in the brain, understand the assumed positives of both products and their risks, understand what influences people to use tobacco and THC, become familiar with popular products, and understand how these impact teens and our communities. First, we're going to start off with some terminology. Smoking is the act of inhaling and exhaling smoke from burning tobacco or cannabis products, such as cigarettes, cigars, or pipes. Vaping is the act of inhaling and exhaling aerosol from heating liquid chemicals in e-cigarettes, vapes, or Juuls. Contrary to popular belief, when one vapes, they are not inhaling a vapor, which is specifically water vapor. They're inhaling an aerosol, which contains other things in that liquid, including chemicals, and they may also include heavy metals or other ingredients within that aerosol beyond water. These products, both smoking and vaping, and then the alternative products, are highly addictive. So it is incredibly difficult to stop smoking or vaping once someone starts using. Cessation is the process of quitting the use of a substance. Now, if there's any takeaway that you would take that is the biggest takeaway of all of these slides, it would be the next several slides. Addiction does not mean that a child is bad or rebelling, or that an adult is a junkie. Over the years, many labels have been used to describe those that are dealing with addiction. These labels are often incredibly stigmatizing and isolating. When someone has an addiction, there is almost always an underlying mental health condition or other circumstance. Addictions often start out as a coping mechanism. So, an analogy for this, many of us tend to bring Tylenol or Advil with us to the workplace or have it at school, and that is meant to help us cope with headaches or other things that maybe come up during the workday. They help us to get through the day so that we can continue whatever duties we have, whether it be going to class and sitting through another lecture, or going to work and looking at screens, or whatever it is that you happen to be doing with work that day. Others may use a substance to cope, which can develop into an addiction in the case of tobacco, THC, and other substances. Additionally, often those who have an addiction want to quit. These are some relatively recent statistics. 70% of those who smoke want to quit, and 63.9% of middle and high school students who vape or smoke have reported wanting to quit. This ties right back in with those labels. A child is not necessarily bad or rebelling. An adult is not necessarily a junkie because they use a substance. Oftentimes, they want to quit, and maybe they just don't have those resources that they need or the support they need in order to do it. When a child is found with a vape in school, or for many parents, if a child is found to own a vape, oftentimes the first thing that is done is someone will then take away the vape, and then the child will have some sort of punishment. So in school, that might be suspension or expulsion, depending on the severity of the infraction. And for parents, oftentimes that means the child is then grounded. When we send a child home from school and we suspend them, that gives them time at home where they might be able to continue to vape. And if you ground your child and then you're sending them to school and you took away their device, but their friends could get them another one and they can continue to vape. So while both of these do discuss a kind of a method of this happens, so this is the consequence, it doesn't necessarily help the person who's facing the addiction. One of, if not the biggest points that you can take away from this training is that you cannot punish someone out of an addiction. You also cannot love someone out of an addiction. Those who are trying to quit are fighting their brains in order to do so. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that is and how that works. The best thing that we can do is to support them in this battle against their brains as they try to quit. Next, we will talk about the elements of addiction. The elements of addiction can be sorted into 3 buckets. The first being compulsion and craving, the second being consequence, and the third being loss of control. Compulsion and craving is the need to use a substance or to engage in a behavior. This can be triggered by environmental cues, which can include location. So if someone always smokes on the back deck, if they go out onto the back deck, they might feel a need to smoke. People, so maybe a group of friends always sits in a circle and passes a vape around the circle. They might be triggered to want to vape when they hang out with those people. And then seeing items related to the addiction. So if they always vape, seeing a vape, or if they always smoke, seeing a cigarette, or something like that. Addiction also comes with consequences. So that can be physical consequences, mental or mental health consequences, social consequences, or financial harm that can be caused by the addiction. This can also include the inability to complete work duties, pay bills, or complete other activities of daily living. And then finally, we have the loss of control, which is the inability to limit usage, stop engaging in, or maintain a personal boundary with the addiction. So this can then lead to the consequence of missing important meetings or being late to class in order to engage in the addiction. Next, we will talk about nicotine and THC and their pathways in the brain. When I say pathway, I'm talking about a chain of events to achieve a specific outcome. The more this pathway is used, the faster and stronger the connection becomes. A great example of this is when you started to ride your bike. When you first started and you were just learning, you probably fell quite a few times. You were really just trying to get the movement down. As you practiced, you got better. And if you continued to practice, you may have eventually been able to do tricks that you would never have been able to do when you first tried to ride that bike. We also have neurotransmitters, which are chemicals in the brain that are responsible for very specific tasks and functions. One chemical that we are going to talk about today is dopamine, which is also known as the feel-good chemical. It does have other functions, but for today's purpose, we will focus on the feel-good function. Finally, we have receptors, where neurotransmitters and other chemicals go to do their job. The receptor we will talk about today is the nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, which is where nicotine goes to do its job. We will also talk about the cannabinoid 1 receptor, which is where cannabis or THC will then go to do its job. Both of these receptors will be called slightly different things just for ease. So the nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, I will refer to that as the nicotine receptor, and the cannabinoid 1 receptor I will call the THC receptor. Both of these receptors are part of the dopamine pathway to make you feel good. So the pathway that happens in order to increase the amount of dopamine in the brain so that you feel good. First, we will talk about the nicotine pathway in the brain. For these examples, we will assume that the product that contains either nicotine or THC for the THC pathway is inhaled. So that will be either smoking or vaping primarily. So In the nicotine pathway for the brain, someone will use a product containing nicotine. Nicotine will then enter their bloodstream, and that blood with the nicotine will then enter the brain. That takes about 10 seconds or less. Once nicotine has reached the brain, the nicotine will then find the nicotine receptors and turn them on. The nicotine receptors are located roughly in this region of the brain. When these nicotine receptors are turned on, it stimulates the production of dopamine. So the brain will start to make more dopamine. Dopamine is produced roughly in this part of the brain here. Then, the increase in the amount of dopamine in the brain produces this feel-good sensation. And it's a cycle. So every time someone uses a product containing nicotine, they will get that boost of feeling good, that feel-good sensation, within 10 seconds or less of each puff. Next, we will talk about the THC pathway in the brain. It is very similar to the nicotine pathway. Similarly with nicotine, we will assume that someone is vaping or smoking the THC product. So someone will use a product containing THC. The THC will then enter their bloodstream, and then that blood with THC will enter the brain. This typically will take about 1 to 5 minutes. The THC, once it's in the brain, will then find the THC receptor, and it'll turn them on. The THC receptors are located roughly in this part of the brain, and when they're activated, they stimulate dopamine production. So again, the brain will start to produce more dopamine. And again, dopamine production occurs in roughly this part of the brain. The increase in dopamine levels produces the feel-good sensation, and again, it's a cycle. So every time someone uses a product containing THC, they will get a boost of feeling good, that feel-good sensation, within about 1 to 5 minutes of taking that puff. It should be noted that for THC, sometimes it will take more than one use in order to get the full effect. So someone who uses for the first time may not get the exact same experience as someone who uses a second time. And now some notes about both pathways. The brain is incredibly lazy, and it really, really likes shortcuts. Nicotine and THC are incredible shortcuts that result in an increased amount of dopamine in the brain. In fact, the dopamine that is produced is actually more than the normal amount of dopamine that you would get from completing a task, for example. It's similar in the levels that are produced with heroin and cocaine use. And the brain wants more of this easy dopamine, which then results in addiction. And falling dopamine and nicotine and THC levels in the brain can then result in withdrawal symptoms. Next, we will talk about the perceived pros, the cons or the reality, and the risks of nicotine and THC use. When I say perceived, I use the word perceived because a lot of these pros are actually myths. First is that nicotine and THC use can provide stress or anxiety relief. The second is that THC produces a high. Now this one is true. The third is that it can be used as a sleep or an insomnia aid. It's also said that these can be used for weight loss, anti-depression, muscle spasm treatment, chronic pain treatment, and that THC use can result in improved performance in athletes. The cons or the reality side of these is that any stress relief that is gained is often short-lived, followed by an increase in stress. It can also cause an increase in anxiety. It can worsen depression, especially when quitting, and that any increases in dopamine levels result in a decrease when quitting, which increases the difficulty to secede or to quit the substance that's being used. Additionally, regular THC use in adolescence is linked with a 7-point IQ drop, which is the difference between an A student and a C student. Now, the research on this is just starting to be conducted. It's just kind of a budding research area. But this research suggests that this 7-point IQ drop is not recoverable and it is permanent. And then finally, the risks associated with both nicotine and THC use. These risks include addiction, memory loss or memory difficulties, damage to teen brain development, lung damage or cancer, and then the potential to develop various different mental health conditions, including depression, anxiety, psychosis, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and others. This is not an exhaustive list. There are also some additional risks that are specifically linked with vaping. The first is in relation to FDA approval and regulation. Vaping is not an approved method to quit smoking per the FDA. And most e-cigarette products are not regulated by the FDA. This is because only 45 products at the time of the recording of this training, only 45 products have been market authorized by the FDA. Market authorization is something that is separate from FDA approval. When a product is FDA approved, it is generally known to be effective and safe within some specific parameters. When a product is FDA market authorized, it is authorized to be sold, but it does not necessarily mean that the product is safe and effective. And only 45 products have that market authorization. When I say product, I mean you go to the store and you grab a box off the shelf, not entire companies. And so when an e-cigarette product is not regulated by the FDA, that also means that the packaging is not necessarily regulated. So when it comes to packaging, the nicotine content that is reported on the packaging is often inaccurate, and it may not actually match what's in the product. The box may say it's 5 milligrams, and you may be having 10 or 15. Additionally, all of the risks of the product are not necessarily always disclosed on that packaging. And there's no data that is shared about how one vape cartridge compares to cigarettes. In reality, one vape pod or cartridge is equal to about 1 to 3 packs of cigarettes. And then finally, we have ingredients. Glycerol is a very common additive in the vapor for the vape products, or the aerosol, I should say. It is not harmful if it's in food that you're consuming. So like gummy bears, gummy worms, anything like that, perfectly safe to eat. It can be incredibly harmful when it is burned and heated and then inhaled. When it's inhaled, it will coat the lungs. It'll also help other chemicals to get deeper into the lungs, and it can cause permanent lung damage. So an example of this is the condition called popcorn lung, which was discovered at a popcorn factory when the workers started to have issues when it comes to lungs due to the fact that they were inhaling anything that was sprayed onto that popcorn. So popcorn lung is not named for what it looks like, but more so where it was found. But again, inhaling these ingredients can cause permanent damage to the lungs. A couple of slides ago, I mentioned that smoking or vaping can cause damage to teen brain development. This ties beautifully in with this next slide. Young people are more likely to become addicted and to become addicted more quickly. The brain is not fully developed until age 25 to 30, depending on the person. And during this time, it is rapidly making new connections and setting the foundation for life. The brain is basically on its tutorial level. When you introduce nicotine and THC products before the brain is developed, it gives the brain these shortcuts. And remember, the brain is lazy, even in development. The brain will happily take the shortcut over building that foundational road that you need in order to function without the substance. Then, when someone tries to take away that substance, the brain doesn't know what to go back to. It doesn't have that foundational road, and it makes it even harder to quit. For very similar reasons, teens can become addicted with just one puff, and it's harder for teens to quit because, again, those normal foundations were not fully established and solidified before they started using the substance. So now, how and why do people start smoking and vaping? Well, when it comes to vaping, it's incredibly accessible. Online, oftentimes all you have to do is check a box that says you're 21, and then you can have your product shipped directly to your home. They also come with fun colors and flavors. There's social influences and social media influencers, celebrities, and even cloud chasing competitions, which I'll explain. And then we have things like smoking, where the smoke looks cool, or someone started on a vape and then added smoking in later. And then both of these have some shared characteristics of peer pressure, family habits, social media, TV celebrities, advertising and marketing, and of course, using it as a coping mechanism. I mentioned cloud chasing competitions. These are competitions where the goal is to make the most incredible shapes and do the best tricks with the aerosol from a vape. These competitions tend to have cash prizes for them that range from approximately $50 at the local level to $10,000 or more on the international level for first place. This is an incredible incentive for young people who maybe want to make a little bit more money. Additionally, we have social media and groups of people like Zinfluencers, who are social media influencers that promote Zins and other nicotine pouches, which are used orally. Zins and other nicotine pouches are a product that's almost kind of like a replacement for chewing tobacco. You just kind of pop it in your mouth, and it's a little packet that contains wood pulp and some nicotine, and you pop it in your mouth and you kind of soak on it or suck on it like a lozenge, and just kind of swallow the saliva mixed with whatever comes off of the zin. Zins contain 1.5 to 9 milligrams of nicotine, depending on the product, and 1 to 5 milligrams is actually absorbed, again, depending on the product. Comparatively, one cigarette contains about 8 to 20 milligrams of nicotine, with about 1 to 2 milligrams being absorbed. Zins contain 3 to 4 times more nicotine than traditional cigarettes on average. Zyn also has a rewards program where you can earn rewards and earn points with each purchase, and then redeem those points for prizes or more product so that you can donate those points to causes like deforestation or hunger. Some examples of prizes that you can get, which are visible here on the screen, are premium electronics, home goods, limited edition Zyn items, apparel, gift cards, and more. The list goes on. This is an actual screenshot of my computer. You can actually Google Zyn rewards points and this will pop right up. These kinds of things tend to scream towards young people. Then you have some nicotine pouches that use synthetic or artificial nicotine, which increases the risk for nicotine poisoning. And teens are drawn to all of these products for so many reasons. You have the influencers online making it look cool. You have the rewards programs, which is an incentive to keep purchasing. And then you have the fact that these can also come in flavors. You can get flavored Zins, so they taste good too. While teens cannot be the target audience in terms of Zyn saying, hey kids, look at this, or other companies saying, hey kids, look at this, a lot of their marketing tends to catch the eye of young people. Next, we will talk about a bunch of products that are available on the market. First, we have cigarettes and clove cigarettes. Clove cigarettes are actually making a comeback. Cloves which is an ingredient in the cigarette, actually soothe the back of the throat, which then makes it so that people can smoke longer and smoke more. And then, of course, we have e-cigarettes. Next, we have nicotine gum, nicotine pouches, and nicotine patches. All of these can be more easily hidden, and it's a way to continue using without it being incredibly obvious to others. And then more specifically for cannabis products or THC, we have products like edibles, dab pens, and even drinks. And youth have access to all of these products, in addition to some specific products that are designed to help hide a vape in plain sight, which I will show you some photos of now. All of these photos have been found on actual websites where these products can be purchased. First, we have the vape hoodies. So it is a hoodie where the aglet or the tip of that drawstring is actually a vape. So someone can have a vape on them and it will look just like a normal hoodie. Then we have highlighter vapes or other writing implements. And we have smartwatch vapes. So it looks like a smartwatch, but you can clip the smartwatch piece off of the wristband and it is a fully functioning vape. And then we have USB vapes like Juuls, which were popular quite a few years back. And then we have products like car key vapes, where it looks like a car key, but it is a vape. And then products like lip balm, chapstick, or other makeup type products that are also disguised as vapes. Another popular thing that youth have started to do is to combine THC and nicotine. They do this by taking a cigarette and cutting it open and taking the leaves out of the cigarette and combining that with marijuana buds in a bong or a pipe, which they then smoke. So they're bringing in two substances at once. They're taking two substances. Many problems can arise from this, especially because you are combining different types of medications. Tobacco is a stimulant, and marijuana or cannabis and THC can function as a depressant, a stimulant, or a hallucinogen, depending on that specific strain. This then brings in the possibility for drug interactions between these types. So if you have a stimulant, stimulants increase the amount of activity in the brain. So this would be kind of the equivalent of having multiple energy drinks all at once. You're having a lot of caffeine or a lot of, in this case, another type of stimulant, tobacco or potentially THC, and it increases the amount of activity in the brain. So it can have a synergistic effect where the effect of the stimulant is stronger than it would have been otherwise. You can also have a stimulant and a depressant where they're kind of fighting against each other because a depressant decreases the amount of activity in the brain. And then you can also have kind of like a stacking effect where you have a stimulant from the tobacco and you have a hallucinogen from the marijuana or the THC. And so now it's just kind of stacking on top of each other. So you have increased brain activity and hallucinations. So this can increase and affect the effect of the substance beyond safe levels. There are also many products on the market that teens can repurpose to hide products. A lot of these products on the next slides were developed to help for home invasions if you're worried about a home invasion to hide valuable items, but teens can repurpose these in order to hide their vapes. Some of these products include false bottom water bottles, false soda cans, and for those who like Jurassic Park, false shaving cream cans. They can also have sunscreen bottles, plastic water bottles, fake lipstick or other makeup type products, a fake spray on sunscreen, and even a green bean can. If you can think of a product that is available, it's probably something that they could find. They may also be able to use bags with false linings or jackets with hidden pockets, in addition to the disguised vapes, which I showed you. Many feelings may come up about youth use of these products, especially given what has just been covered. In truth, about 7% of youth use these types of products and are smoking or vaping or doing other substances or other forms of these substances, I should say. That doesn't mean that it's not a problem. It very much is. And it is concerning to a lot of people that this is something that is made available. And so we will close this training with discussing what you should do if you catch a youth with a THC or nicotine product and how you can best support them. So you'll want to do something called reassure, question, persuade, refer, and support. When I say reassure, you want to reassure the person that they are not in trouble. You're not angry with them. They may still have consequences, but you're not angry with them and that you want to help them. Oftentimes, when someone is caught doing something they shouldn't, their brain immediately will go into fight or flight, and all they want to do is make it out of that situation. If you can get them out of that fight or flight by reassuring them, they'll be more receptive to the rest of this. Then it's helpful to ask some questions so that you know what their experience has been so far and how you can best support them. So these are questions like, how long have you been using? What products do you use? How often do you use? And how can I best support you? Then you'll want to persuade the person to want to quit and to seek some help. Those who want to make a change are much more successful than those who have change forced upon them. Then you'll want to refer them to medical professionals who will be able to support them through this process and provide additional resources. You will also need to bring their parent or guardian in on the conversation, so please keep that in mind as well. And then, of course, you want to support them through this battle. They're fighting their brains in order to do this, and they may relapse. Statistically, those who are working to quit will relapse at least once. Help them get back on track and provide the support that they need to stay on track. Be their cheerleader. It's very similar for adults. You want to do the same thing. Granted, the reassure step may not be as necessary depending on the context. So again, reassure, question, persuade, refer, support. It's often best to start with things that you've observed. So I've noticed that, things have been going on. Maybe, you're taking more smoke breaks, you're spending more time on it, or, I've noticed that stuff's been getting hard lately. Are you doing okay? Then you might want to ask, hey, are you doing okay? Is there something I can do to help you? Do you think that maybe you might be a little more dependent on the specific product than maybe before? Do you think maybe getting some help might be a good thing? And then you want to try to persuade and refer them to seek help. So maybe you should talk to your doctor about this. There are a lot of resources out there to help people quit or decrease their dependence and use. And then support them regardless of the outcome. You may get a response of, oh no, it's okay, I don't want to quit. I'm perfectly okay as I am, and that's okay. Reassure them that you will still be there, and if they ever do decide to quit, you're a resource, you want to support them, but you also will respect their decision if they decide not to. If they do want to quit, support them in that. If you also smoke or use a product, try to quit together. And then provide alternatives to smoking and be their cheerleader in the process. Some alternatives may be, hey, let's go and do something this afternoon, or do something with them, or schedule things with them so that they're spending more time doing other things and they don't have as much time to think about smoking or vaping. And so finally, we will talk about some resources that are available. Some of these are specific to the state of Connecticut, whereas others are available outside of the state of Connecticut. The first two are from the American Lung Association, So we have Not on Tobacco and Intervention for Nicotine Dependence, Education, Prevention, Tobacco, and Health, also known as In-Depth. And then for state-specific resources, we have the Connecticut Quit Line, or Commit to Quit, and Vape Free Connecticut. And then a couple more resources that are available are This Is Quitting, which is a text program by Truth Initiative, and Credible Mind, which is the Farmington Valley Health District's platform for resources on this topic. Credible Mind also has other resources for mental health and other aspects of health, and is not exclusive to tobacco and THC. Some other resources that are available include medical providers or pediatricians, your local health district or office, and schools and counselor offices, as they will often have resources as well. The QR code on the screen links to a handout that summarizes a lot of the information from this PowerPoint. It also provides the links to each of these resources, and the QR code on that handout links to these slides. So you will be able to look at these slides individually should you desire that. Remember, you cannot punish someone out of an addiction. You also cannot love someone out of an addiction. Those trying to quit are fighting their brains in order to do so. The best thing we can do is to support them in this battle as they try to quit. If there are any questions that you may have, please feel free to post them down in the comments. We will try to respond to those as we are able. Thank you for watching, and I hope this has been helpful. And here are the links to all of the resources that I mentioned a couple of slides back, in addition to that QR code to the resource handout again.